had an all-time classic Saturday night when the Green Bay Packers gave the 49ers all they could handle. And I took the Packers to cover this game, plus 10. But I never would have thought, watching this game, I will find myself actually believing that the Packers were going to win it. Up until before the fourth quarter, I was really convinced that Jordan Love was going to take Green Bay to the NFC Championship. And I was texting a couple of my homies and I was telling them, hey man, like, you think the Green Bay Packers could beat the Detroit Lions again and then make it to the Super Bowl with Jordan Love? But didn't get the luxury of having that conversation because the Packers, their field goal kicker, missed the field goal. Like, well, what's up with these field goal kickers, man? If I was a head coach, my first two things that I would tell my general manager to get is a damn quarterback and a great field goal kicker. Like, imagine if all these teams that had these missed field goals this past weekend had Justin Tucker, how different these games would have been. Kicker has to be the most underrated position in the National Football League. It has to be. We all give the quarterback position so much praise, and having a great quarterback is key to having success. But do you know how many games are won and lost and how many coaches lose their jobs because of games that come down to missed field goals? Just watching this game, it made me appreciate having a good field goal kicker and Chris Boswell being a Steelers fan. If the Packers had a good field goal kicker, they possibly will be playing in the NFC Championship next weekend. It's crazy how they didn't even think to replace this dude because they asked Matt LaFleur or Mike LaFleur, I get their names mixed up, but Coach LaFleur about their kicking situation, he said that I just pray every time we got to kick one. Like, if you got to pray every time you kick a field goal, wouldn't that mean that you need to move on and get a different one? That makes no sense to me, but okay, it costed them. And Jordan Love, he was balling out in this game. Like, this dude has been a top 10 quarterback this season. And a lot of people didn't really know what to expect from Jordan Love because we didn't really see too much of this dude. And his first two games of the start of this season were really good. And then things got a little bit rough. But then we enter that stretch of Thanksgiving football. And after Thanksgiving, that's when the real football season begins. That's when teams start to hit their strides. And that's when the contenders start to separate themselves from the contenders. And Jordan Love, during his final stretch of the season, his last couple of games, he threw 23 touchdowns and only one interception. In this game, he was making all kinds of crazy-ass throws from different arm angles, off platform. He has to be one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League when it comes to playing off script. But unfortunately, the throws that he was able to hit in this game for the majority weren't able to put the Packers in a situation to win when the ball was in his hands on the final drive, because the same throw that resulted in the interception, which won the game for San Francisco, were the same throws that he was making with ease for basically the whole entire game. And then all of a sudden on the final drive, it bites him in the rear end. And I was just looking at him and I was thinking, bro, what were you thinking trying to even attempt that pass? But at the same time, like, I didn't go at him too hard because it's not like he wasn't making those same throws for the other 3 quarters of the game. But the fourth quarter wasn't really that great out of Jordan Love. And that missed field goal really cost them. San Francisco, they looked really, really bad in this game. And it's even a surprise that they even were able to sneak out with a victory. Brock Purdy, say what you want to about this dude being overrated, calling him a game manager. He delivered in the biggest moment when San Francisco needed him to put them in position to win the game. That's a sign of you having a franchise quarterback. You see, I can't remember too many 49er games when they were in the playoffs. They needed a touchdown to win the game, and Jimmy Garoppolo delivered. As a matter of fact, it was the complete opposite. The 49ers, anytime they were in the postseason, their game plan was to keep the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands. Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan trusts him. And that's the reason why he throws the football a little bit more than what he has done in the past. When you think of Kyle Shanahan, you think of run first coach. But with Brock Purdy, it seems like he has like this air raid mentality that he thinks he's Mike Leach or Lincoln Riley and he can just sling the ball all over the damn football field. This wasn't Brock Purdy's best game, but he did show up in the fourth quarter, and that's what makes a great quarterback. You want to tell your quarterback, hey, we know you didn't have a great game, but you got a chance to make up for it because the ball's in your hands, lead us downfield, take us to the NFC Championship. That's what a franchise quarterback does. A franchise QB rises to the occasion, and that's what Brock Purdy did. And nobody in the media is giving him credit for it. You still keep trying to find ways to downplay Brock Purdy's success. He's not carried by talent. He's not carried by Kyle Shanahan. He's just a good quarterback in a really good situation, like all the other great quarterbacks that have played this game. There's never been a single quarterback that's led a team to the Super Bowl with the terrible roster and the terrible head coach. You need talent around you to succeed in the National Football League. Brock Purdy, it wasn't a great game, but he put the 49ers in position to ultimately get the win. And he's the sole reason why they're even here. If it wasn't for them drafting Brock Purdy with the last pick of the draft, they wouldn't be here right now. Trey Lance isn't good. They traded him for a reason. Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't great. We saw what Jimmy Garoppolo was. He was just a good game manager, but anytime you needed Jimmy Garoppolo to step up and make the big throws to win you the game, he couldn't do it. That's why they lost that first Super Bowl that they went to under Kyle Shanahan to Patrick Mahomes. And Jimmy Garoppolo outplayed Patrick Mahomes for the first 3 quarters and 8 minutes of that Super Bowl. But he missed that big throw to Emmanuel Sanders, and that was wraps. Brock Purdy, he put the 49ers in position to win. If you were to have Jimmy Garoppolo in this situation, they wouldn't have won that game. Because Jimmy Garoppolo was never really seen for being a clutch quarterback. He wasn't really a quarterback who you could trust in these late game situations. So Brock Purdy, it wasn't his greatest performance, but he did deliver in the fourth quarter when the game was on the line, and he has my kudos for that. And I'm not even a Brock Purdy hater. Like, I love Brock Purdy. I defend Brock Purdy until, the death of me, honestly. I'm a Brock Purdy fan. I defend Brock Purdy just as much as I defend Lamar Jackson. These are two of the most overhated players in the NFL. People look at any small thing to criticize Brock Purdy about, but they never give him props for what he does do right. And what he does do, it's the most important thing, which we should only care about, which is winning. Who doesn't want a quarterback who wins games? That's what Brock Purdy has done. This dude went from being a 4th-string quarterback to coming out of nowhere and just taking the league by storm. The 49ers have had one of the best records in the National Football League with Brock Purdy at the helm at QB. You don't just go from being the last pick of the draft, which is pretty much a meme, to snapping against the Miami Dolphins last year, having no practice time, no chemistry with the first team offense, and still being able to be as good as what you are. Like, this dude came off an elbow injury that was pretty concerning to a lot of people. And yet he's still playing at a high level. He's an MVP candidate. He's not going to win MVP, but he definitely should finish as the runner-up behind Lamar Jackson for it, or either 3rd place behind CMC, however you want to rank him. He still deserves to be in that discussion. He's had a fantastic season, and I'm hoping that we get to see him in the Super Bowl. It's the battle of the most overhated players in the National Football League. Brock Purdy versus Lamar Jackson. So Brock Purdy, he came through. He led the 49ers to the win. The defense stepped up. The defense didn't play their best game. Hell, everybody's talking about how Brock Purdy didn't play that great. This defense didn't play good neither. They had no answers for Jordan Love. Jordan Love was doing whatever he wanted to do against the 49ers defense. And the big issue with the 49ers defensively is that you look at all the talent that they have on paper, but they don't necessarily play up to the level of talent that they have on that side of the football. This defense definitely has taken a step back under Steve Wilks compared to how well it played under the Miko Ryans. They're not good at stopping the run. That's pretty evident with how well Aaron Jones was toting that rock, and evident with how much success the Ravens had running the football against their defense. And you play Detroit in the NFC Championship, that has to be a very big concern. And if you can protect your quarterback and you can neutralize the pass rush of the 49ers, you expose another weakness that they have, which is their secondary. Now, their secondary isn't bad, but it's really inconsistent. And it's not a secondary that is good without having a good pass rush. So if you are the Detroit Lions, you got to be feeling really good about your chances. Because although your secondary is a lot worse than the 49ers, at least you know that you should be able to go point for point with San Francisco if this game results in you having to be in a shootout. Green Bay, though, this was an incredible season for them. Nobody expected them to make it this far. Jordan Love proved all the doubters and critics wrong, and he definitely looks like the next great Green Bay Packers quarterback. The Packers seem to be the only team in the NFL that has the formula to developing franchise quarterbacks. They had Brett Starr, then they had Brett Favre, then they go from Favre to Rodgers, and now they go from Rodgers to Jordan Love, and it just seems like the transition has been seamless. And they're working on getting Jordan Love a long-term deal. He's probably going to become one of the highest paid QBs in the NFL. He's probably going to make somewhere around 45, maybe 47 million a year. I definitely think he deserves it with the way he played. I mean, second half of the season, the dude threw 23 touchdowns and only 1 interception. And yeah, he didn't come through in this game, but you know, for the most part, outside of that interception, this was a fantastic performance out of Jordan Love. He's a young quarterback. He's going to be back here, and he has a young team around him. Very good young receivers, a good offensive line. The Packers are going to be a force in the NFC for the next decade. And the reason why it's going to happen sooner rather than later, the Packers being able to make it to a conference championship game again and being able to make it to a Super Bowl again, is because the NFC is lacking elite quarterbacks. The AFC has nothing but elite quarterbacks. You look at the teams that are in the playoffs this season, that or were in the playoffs before they got eliminated. The teams that went to the divisional round, they all had great quarterbacks. You had CJ Stroud, who's played at elite level. You got Lamar Jackson. You got Patrick Mahomes. You had Josh Allen. The teams that put themselves at a disadvantage when it comes to being a legitimate contender are the teams that don't get elite quarterback play. When you don't have a truly elite franchise quarterback, it kind of handicaps you when it comes to your potential to win it all. The Green Bay Packers aren't going to have that. And with you having one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and possibly a top 2, top 3 quarterback in the NFC, it definitely improves your aspects of being able to win it all in the foreseeable future. So the future for the Packers is definitely bright. They draft insanely well. That's one thing that I always defended about the Packers. Like, with the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, it kind of makes them look like the winners in the end, because they traded away Aaron Rodgers and they got so much flack for trading up for Jordan Love. And this dude had an incredible season, leads them to the divisional round. They exceed expectations, over-exceed expectations, because there were people who didn't even think they were going to be a playoff team. So we look at this whole Jordan Love, draft day, trade up. They ended up being winners in the end, and now they got great receivers. The same things that people criticized about the Green Bay Packers not having when Aaron Rodgers is there, Jordan Love has. He has receivers. He has a great run game. He should have a really great defense. You know, the defense is really talented. They drafted well on that side of the football too. It's just that the dude calling plays on defense isn't that great. But this was his best game ever as a play caller for the Green Bay Packers. Joe Barry's defense had an incredible performance against the 49ers. And the reason why I didn't think that the Packers were going to have a shot at winning this thing before the game kicked off was because of that defense. I was confident that their offense was going to be able to move the ball on San Francisco's defense. Their offensive line was going to be good enough to protect Jordan Love, and the receivers were going to be good enough to exploit average secondary of the 49ers. So if they can get a better defensive coordinator, This definitely is a team to look out for next season. But with how well the D played, that may be the only bad thing from this game if you're a Packers fan. It's the aspect of Joe Barry possibly returning next season and the last 2 games of the season being a reason to bring him back. Now, if you're LaFleur, you got an excuse to keep him around. Well, look how this defense played against the 49ers. Look how it played against the Chicago Bears. Look how they played against the Dallas Cowboys. So that's probably the only negative to take away from this game. If you're a fan of the Packers, is that Joe Barry is probably going to be back for another season. But the 49ers, man, they got some things to clean up before they play the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship. I still would pick the 49ers to win, but it's definitely going to be a really close call. The Lions definitely have everything that you need to be able to have success against San Francisco. They can run the football. They're great up front. My only question is, how is that secondary going to hold up?